All right, this is the video answer key for 1%, 10%. 10% of 24 is going to move that decimal point over 1 because we are multiplying by 1/10. 2 4/10. 1% is going to make this number even smaller because 1% of a number is going to be much smaller than that original number, but we keep the same digits. To find 14%, well, we know that 10% is 2 4/10, and we know what 1% is. So if we take that 1% and we add it 4 times, lining up the decimal, we should get 14%. 10 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. 16, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 13, 3 36 hundredths. Okay, so 1, 2, 3 answers. The next one, 10% of 27 is 2 7/10. 1% of 27 is going to make that number even smaller, but we're going to keep the same digits. To find 14%, I'm going to do this one a little bit differently. Here, I added 1% 4 times. I could also recognize that if I take 1% of 27 hundredths and I multiply it by 4, rather than repeated addition, I'm going to multiply, because that's the definition of multiplication. 28. When you add or subtract, the decimals align, but when you multiply, just count and you'll be fine. I'm going to swoop it over twice. So 4% equals 1 800ths. I'm going to take my 10% of 2 7/10. I'm going to take my 4% of 1 800ths. I'm going to add them together to get 14%. Annex to 0. 3 78 hundredths. Now we're going to do a bonus question. So I'm going to ask the question, I'm going to tell you to pause it, and I'm going to tell you to find it. In this same question, can you find 34%? How would that be different than finding 14%? Well, I hope you know that if you know what 10% is, go ahead and pause it now, find it on your own. 10% plus 10% plus 10% would give you your 30%. And then you already know what 4% is, which is I'm going to add that up to get to 34%. 8, 21, 2, 4, 6, 8. 9 18 hundredths. So we took that 10%. You also could have taken that 10% of 2 7/10 and multiplied by 3 to get 8 1/10, and then take that 8 1/10, which is that 10%, which is now 30%, and added your 4% to it, which is 1 800ths. Still get the same answer, just a different way. I want you to notice my labels. When I'm working with this method, it's really great to label where you're coming up with these numbers. All right, let's continue. That was a good bonus. Number 3, 10% of 26 is 2 6/10. 1% of 26 is even smaller than 10%. It's going to keep the same digits because it's all those powers of 10. You're going to end up with 26 hundredths. 13%. So I already know what 10% is. Remember the labels. Label your work. 10% is 2 6/10. I think I'm going to multiply this one. I'm going to take that 1% of 26 hundredths. I'm going to multiply it by 3 to get 3%. Swoop it over twice. 78 hundredths is my 3%. I'm going to align my decimal points. $3 38 hundredths is 13%. That's my final answer. All right, let's do number 4. 10% of 26 is 2 6/10. 1% of 26 is 2600. I hope you're seeing the pattern develop here. 12%. So I'm going to take my 10% of 2 6/10. I'm going to just add twice and make sure to align my decimal point. %, equals 3 12/100. Let's go over here and do 10% of 11, which is going to be 1 1/10. 1% of 11 is 11/100. 14%. So we have choices. We can repeatedly add. We can multiply and then add. I'm going to multiply and then add here. So I'm going to take 1%, which is 11/100. I'm going to multiply it by 4 because I need 4% here and get 44/100. So I know that 10% is 1 1/10. 4%, based on what I found here, is 44/100. We're going to add those together to get 14%. Annex the 0, align the decimals. 1 54/100. Here, 10% of 20. Oh, I love this one because when you swoop that decimal point over, you really just get 2. You could write it as 2 0/10, but that 0 is unnecessary. So we really want to think about that as 2. 1% of 20 is 2/10. To find 12%, we're going to take 10%, which is 2. We're going to add 1%, which is 2/10, and 1%, which is 2/10. 10 plus 1 plus 1 is 12%. Annex that 0, 2 4/100. All right, let's do number 7. 10% of 21 is 2 1/10. 1% of 21 is 21/100. 10% is 2 1/10. We know that. We're going to add 1% and 1%, aligning the decimal point. Annex the 0. 12% equals 2 52/100. Next. Okay. 25. 10% of 25 is 2 5/10. 1% of 25 is 25/100. I'm going to do the multiplication method here. So I'm going to take 25/100, which is 1%. I'm going to multiply it by 3 to get 3%. Well, this is like 3/4, which is 75 cents. I might have been able to do that mentally. So I say 10% is 2 5/10. 3% is 25/100, or like, not, it should be 75. 10%. Don't work in pen, kids. Much better. 13% is 3 25/100. Number 9. 10% of 24 is 2 4/10. 1% of 24 is 24/100. 12%, I'm going to take that 10%. I'm going to take 1%, align the decimal. Align the decimal. 12% equals 8 4 8 2 88/100. Last one, and then we'll do a bonus after number 10. So 10% of 23 is 2 3/10. 1% is 23/100. I'm going to do the multiplication method here. I miss it, so I'm going to take that 1%, which is 23/100. I'm going to double it by multiplying by 2 to find 2%. 46/100 is going to be 2%. So if 10% is 2 3/10, then 2% is 46/100. Annex my 0. 12% will equal 2 76/100. Let's do a real quick bonus. Can we find, I don't know, 44/100? 44% of 23. So it's a little bit less than half. We already know what 10% is. So if 10% is 2 3/10, I could add that 4 times. I could also multiply it by 4. 3, 6, 9, 12. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. So that's 40. And then I need 4%. So I could take my 23/100ths. I could multiply by 4. Get 92/100ths. Oh, isn't that interesting how they're related? So to get 44%, I take 40%, which is 9 2/10, and I add 4%, which is 92/100ths to 10 12/100ths. So, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to do this. We're going to be talking about a different way to do it in a little bit of time. But I think that this is interesting, and I hope you enjoy.